All right, welcome back into the show. Today we're going to be diving into a Sui Treasury idea. In fact, the official Sui Treasury. I don't think you guys are going to want to miss this one. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back in, and let's get started. I do want to thank, of course, Sui for helping us out on this. They're one of our channel partners. And we wanted to dive in a little deeper on where treasuries are going, especially if you look at the ecosystem that we're seeing across all of crypto. This is one of the things that everybody's asking about. Does this have legs? What's it going to look like? And of course, we wanted to bring on two of the experts in the industry. And of course, that's Sam Blackshear, who is the CEO, co-founder and CTO over at Mysten Labs, and also Stephen Mackintosh, CIO of Mill City Ventures. So great to have both of you guys today.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here.
All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about a couple of points. I want to get into Mill City Ventures. Obviously, the big news, $450 million now. The announcement, private placement to initiate a Sui Treasury. Talk to me a little about this, Stephen. First of all, why Sui? You have it on your website there, but I want to hear from you. Why Sui? Why go that direction?
Yeah, so we have been investors in Sui, in Mysten Labs, since the beginning. We are one of the most prolific ecosystem investors. We've invested in Deepbook, Walrus, Sui Lend, Double Up, Shio, which does kind of MEV on Sui, and a whole host of other businesses, some of which aren't disclosed yet. Why Sui is the best place to start. For everyone's benefit, this is the team that was hand-selected by Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook to build Libra and Diem, to introduce a crypto network that would be scaled to 3 billion users and to bring stablecoin infrastructure to the world. And unfortunately, under the previous regime, for various reasons in the SEC, that was not allowed to flourish. So the team left. They started Mysten Labs. I met them in Palo Alto, and I was struck by the intellectual capital and the engineering capability of this business. I previously came from an artificial intelligence background, where the competition for talent was extreme. And if you look at the news today and how Mark Zuckerberg's competing to hire these incredible engineers from OpenAI and paying hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, to recruit the best, this is that team. 5 founders, incredible researchers and engineers. Sam, who's joined on the call today, the inventor of Move programming language. And when we met that team, we thought, okay, this is the future OpenAI of crypto, or what I think many of the analyst community will begin to appreciate in the next few years. It's probably something that looks like a Google or Amazon for Web3, given all of the infrastructure products they've built around the Sui blockchain.
So Sam, you obviously have been around for a while. You've seen kind of the ebbs and flows of where blockchain has gone. When you look at this idea of treasury companies, and especially from Mysten Labs side of things, this is something that I think we're going to see a massive upside for. The question I have is this sustainable for both the industry and also for the companies that are being involved?
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? Like, my journey in the space started in 2018 when, as Stephen was mentioning, I joined the Libra project at Facebook to lead the effort to create and design Move. And so, I worked in the space through the Facebook lens of trying to build a blockchain for a global payments network, and using the experience of Facebook at building scalable systems and consumer appealing systems, and bringing my programming languages tech expertise to the table, along with the expertise of many of my co-founders in cryptography and distributed systems and in these areas. So from that experience, I think we built something pretty cool, but the world wasn't ready for it yet. And when we hopped to found Mysten in 2021, we've taken a lot of the learnings from there to design a system that's even more ambitious in terms of the use cases it's able to address and what it's able to scale to. And I think the world is just now sort of catching up with the ambition of what we built, and even what was designed and built back then. And so I think the DAT trend is an important step toward actually getting to where Facebook wanted to be way back in 2018. Is this is going to be a consumer technology. It's solving real problems for real people. It's broadly available. And so it's just another important step toward legitimacy. And so I think, I think there is an art in designing these DATs in a way that they are sustainable. And one of the reasons that we're really excited about Mill City is because I think as Stephen mentioned, they're very, very deep in the ecosystem. They get it. They're long-term investors. They have keen eyes for talent. And so they've set up the DAT in a way that it is mission aligned with the ecosystem that's around for the long term, not just trying to like capitalize on a short term trend.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that is the difference. When I was diving into Mill City, Stephen, kudos to you guys, because that is the one thing that I'm seeing right now where treasury companies are popping up all over the place in terms of different ecosystems, different tokens, et cetera, most of which do not have experience in blockchain. Many times what they're doing is recruiting experience from blockchain into basically a shell company that is revitalized as a treasury company. That is quite different than what you guys have done. I was looking at your investors here. This is pretty significant. Other notable investors, Pantera Capital, ATW, M2, obviously Selene. I mean, this is like a who's list, including Galaxy on here. First of all, how did you get this many companies really interested in where you guys are going with this?
Yeah, and one big name to add is Jack Kong, one of the biggest Bitcoin miners in the world, who joined us because there's a very interesting Bitcoin DeFi story that's emerging on Sui, which we can get into later in the show. I think, for the investors that joined us, we had a great book build. It was a mix of, Wall Street, multi-strat hedge funds, but also crypto investors. And we wanted investors that were here for the long term. The way these fundraising processes take place, it's pretty insane. We raised that 450 over a 2-day window. We actually had oversubscribed demand. It was, way over 500 million, but we had to kind of cut it back just to make it make sense with the share price and the offering for the pipe. But the demand was incredible. And I think there were, many investors who had a crypto native thesis on why Sui is going to be the category leader. It's already emerged as the category winner of the most previous cycle. It's the only blockchain that has a native programming language built for crypto, which is Move. Sam's the inventor of. It's got this very distinct object-oriented data model, which is fundamentally different from the account-based model that you see on Solana and Ethereum. It's built for inherent scale. It's built for programmable transaction blocks. It's built to handle concurrent simultaneous transactions. And if you look at the future, again, coming from my background in AI, and we think of this world of an agentic future where you've got smart kind of AI wallets that think and act for you on your behalf and do all of these different transactions on chain. You need a universal coordination layer that's like horizontally scalable. And the reason why many of the use cases that we're so accustomed to in Web 2, like social media, gaming, just haven't really taken place in Web 3 yet is because of the underlying infrastructure. And that's what Sui was designed for. Just imagine that the Libra DM team, hadn't been kind of shut down. It probably would have been the biggest crypto business in the world, bigger than Tether, bigger than Coinbase. I mean, so that's an interesting thought, right? And I'm very lucky that that didn't happen because we got to invest in Sam and his team, and we think that's going to happen now. This is going to be the winner, the category leader in crypto. So I'm very excited for the future.
Hey, timing is everything, man. When you look at of what's happening right now in the industry and where we're going, I think maybe for the better, really, of course, for what is happening with Mysten Labs. So I want to get into a little bit around the idea of buying OTC versus going on chain, because this is something we're seeing a handful. Joe Lubin, is notorious for saying, hey, I'll go out on chain. We're going to acquire assets that way. Why not go that route as opposed to going, on an OTC desk for acquiring assets?
Oh, yeah. So just to kind of make that point really clear, we are running a dynamic strategy in how we acquire Sui and do it in the most value accretive manner to our investors and shareholders to drive Sui per share. When we entered into this DAT strategy, we are the lead investors alongside Sui, right? We did something that was disproportionate in the DAT space. We locked our shares for 12 months to prove to the Sui community and to our shareholders that we're long-term focused, and that's very interesting. When we acquire Sui through a combination of different strategies, both with our executive team and in partnership with Galaxy, who are our asset manager, we will always try and drive return for our shareholders, and we will do a lot of purchasing in the market, purchasing on chain, purchasing through different strategic means. Nothing's off the table in order to drive the most value accretive form of Sui per share to investors. But longer term, with the balance sheet we build, we will be providing economic security to the network in the form of staking, also running a validator potentially. And then longer term, we'll be providing that liquidity back into Sui. We have been investors in DeepBook. We've been investors in Sui Lend. We've been early backers of the DeFi ecosystem. We think there are flourishing apps and services around Sui that are very interesting for investors because we will be tasked with driving a compliant, safe, and risk-adjusted yield on that balance sheet in the form of Sui per share. And we think that it's just getting started. One point to mention is that Tom Lee has done an amazing job, right, at popularizing the DAT space. He's eloquent. He is a master of brevity. He's got great anecdotes and analogies, and he's introduced this kind of concept of yield, 3% yield on his balance sheet, which is about I think 4 to 5 billion now, and how analysts can see that as earnings and put an earnings multiple on that of 10, 15, 20 times, and then that kind of gets forecasters a way to value your potential premium to NAV. Now, one thing that's really important to stress, Paul, is that staking on Solana and Ethereum is structurally dilutive. You print new tokens to give those rewards. Sui has a hard cap of 10 billion tokens. It's based on the Bitcoin model. It's digitally scarce. And when you stake on Sui, you get real yield. You don't print new tokens to provide that return. That's a very fundamental distinction. And I think that the analyst community will start to evaluate that and effectively forecast that based on Sui's unique properties.
Well, and I think you hit on it right there, is how analysts are starting to see this space, which is in most cases very new to them, a bit foreign actually. And for them to start to understand what's happening in the DAO market, of where we are seeing so much growth right now, whether you look at SharpLink or BMNR, obviously within the Ethereum ecosystem, it starts to get you really thinking through the things that you guys are doing at Mill City. And I think there's a lot of benefits there, huge benefits. So Sam, when you look at the foundation being able to support what Mill City is doing, how are you guys doing it? What's the process for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, so the most important thing, and we get back to this, is just sort of ecosystem alignment. So I think in some ways it's not so different than what's been happening between the Heritage team and Mysten Labs before, just because we're working together on so many different teams in the ecosystem. So, as Stephen brought up, they've invested in Deepbook and Walrus. They have really keen eyes for entrepreneurial talent. They've backed teams like Sweetland and Shio. They've incubated Double Up. I think Double Up in particular, is close to my heart because it's founded by an ML alum, and then Mysten Labs is also an investor in it. And they're just one of the most creative and sort of experimental teams in the space. So I love watching their success and seeing what they're doing. And so I think it's a lot of that. And Stephen mentioned the strategy of later putting the capital back to work in the Sui ecosystem. So for us, I think the most important way to work together is look for the emerging talent, look for the teams that are doing interesting things, or the entrepreneurs, and try to support them together. And that's what ends up being best for the whole ecosystem.
Well, and I think
one thing
go ahead.
Too, to what Stephen was saying about the fixed supply and real staking yields. Something else too that I think not a lot of people know is that Sui also has several built-in burning mechanisms. So for example, every time you touch Sui storage, there's something called the non-refundable storage fee, where a small amount of what you pay for storage is burned. There's also a notion of immutable objects like move packages. There's over 200,000 move packages on the network, and every time you create a new package, a little bit of Sui is burnt as well. And so in addition to having the fixed supply, there's also the supply is going down by small amounts when you do each of those actions. So I think these are the sorts of things that folks don't really know, but I think are going to start to learn a deeper look.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of hidden value there, which I think is now we're starting to get that out there in the open, to your point. Back to you, Stephen, in terms of yield, when you look at where you're going with the strategy, because the likelihood is we're going to start to see yield products showing up in these companies, and most likely will be one of the other solutions of how people would add value to these. Give me your strategy there at Mill City of how you guys see going forward, especially related to yield products.
Yeah, so we have kind of inside Mill City Ventures, a non-bank financial lending business at its core, right? The guys from Mill City, Doug and Joe, based out of Minnesota, built a great business, really honorable kind of management and entrepreneurs. They average about 24% on their loan book. It's really interesting, just as a kind of sidestep, how SME credit is a space that has not really hit DeFi. And I think it's a multi-$100 billion opportunity, right? So, as we run this company, we are going to be, always thinking about operating revenue. And in the future, as we build out Mill City Ventures, we build a balance sheet, we drive return on that balance sheet, we drive, return on the stock. We will be looking into the market for opportunities that have millions of users or hundreds of millions of dollars of cash flow that could fit very well on Sui rails. When I think through this kind of tipping point that we've arrived at, what the DAT phenomenon represents is the unlocking of capital markets. The US capital markets are so unique. They've been responsible for creating, generational companies, right? And we have a very interesting role to play being in partnership and aligned with the Sui Foundation for the long term. We are ecosystem actors. We are ecosystem players. We want to play a very dynamic role in the growth of Sui's value and Sui's vision longer term. And we have a very different kind of operating cadence than, say, a foundation does. We can do things that a foundation doesn't want to do, cannot seem to be doing. So that opens up like a whole universe of commercial possibilities that hasn't been seen before in crypto. And you're empowered by an ecosystem that is growing every day. Like, it's 2 years old. It's got all-time transaction volumes, even surpassing Solana at this point.
Exactly.
I think.
Yeah.
It's got increasing users on the chain. It's got increasing developer growth, the fastest developer growth in the past year of any blockchain, a huge increase in TVL. So, winding it forward 2, 3, 4 years, where do I think the Sui price is going? Well, I think Sui could outperform Solana. I think it could outperform Ethereum in 2 years in terms of its all-time high in FDV. Like, that's easily feasible.
What about vaults? Okay, if you look at the vaults and the value of where these vaults are, I'm looking at just momentum right now. I look at this and I wonder, maybe this is a little risky. It hasn't, there hasn't reached a tipping point just yet. Most likely it will. But until that, do you think this would be something that you guys could just run a vault? Why not go to a Mill City vault?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, in terms of the, strategies we will execute on, we're going to be very public and very transparent with everything. You saw our latest kind of results in terms of how much Sui we hold, how much we've acquired. We're going to publish that every week. And transparency is critical in these DATs in every facet of how you operate. And yeah, nothing is kind of off the table in terms of how we drive return. But the key thing is to do it in a safe, risk-adjusted and compliant way for shareholders, right? So we've looked at many different strategies. We want to be a really significant actor in the growth of Sui's ecosystem. And that involves being an actor in economic security, in the proliferation of DeFi, in providing liquidity. There's a ton of different avenues for growth. Also, if you look at the investor appetite now for return, one of the other companies that we invested in with Galaxy as well is a company called SOTER, SOTER at Caratage.
Right.
That's a crypto native insurer where investors now are getting institutional insurance return pools on their capital by participating in the growth of a crypto native insurance protocol. I think things like that will emerge in Sui as well. And so our job as management is to assess all the opportunities, build a dynamic and safe and risk-adjusted return strategy, and build the balance sheet. And I think that as part of the investor roadshow during the PIPE and subsequently with many of the hedge funds and investors that I've met with, they see a huge opportunity in Sui DeFi. They also see a huge opportunity in the ambitions for Sui to be the home of Bitcoin DeFi. Already we've seen Eka, which has been announced recently, which has got like novel kind of two PC-MPC algorithms that allows for you to essentially provide financing against kind of native Bitcoin assets without bridging, which is really innovative because only 3% of all Bitcoin, I think, is wrapped. And I'm a Bitcoiner. I don't want to bridge my Bitcoin. I don't want to have wrapped versions of my Bitcoin. And being able to use the object-oriented model and Move, which allows for programmability of objects, and to treat Bitcoin as an object on Sui to leverage all of the innovation that Sam built,
right.
I think it's going to be a huge thing in the future. And many institutions are saying to me, okay, Steve, tell me more about that Bitcoin yield story on Sui. And there's going to be very, very exciting things coming out of the Sui and the Mysten team, I think, in the next 6 to 12 months on that.
Hey, Sam, when you look at what's happening, go ahead. I think you had something to add there.
For sure, yeah. Just to add on to that a little bit. So like real world assets and crypto is certainly a big thing and like an important focus for us. But I think our feeling, and this is sort of echoing what Stephen is saying, is that the biggest real world asset that's already tokenized and already there, but is not really usable for programmability for finance is Bitcoin. And so he gave the 3% number. So that's something we're really, really focused on as an ecosystem. The Bitcoin share of Sui's TVL is increasing a lot. We've onboarded projects like Lombard, like Babylon, like Sattler. Stephen mentioned that the Eka team is doing some, and particularly the native team building on Eka is doing some really interesting stuff with Bitcoin yield with high security. And so this is definitely an important focus of us. As we get into other real world assets that involve actually tokenizing anything, that's important too. But the thing with Bitcoin is it's already sitting there and you just need the coordination and the programmability that Sui can provide to take advantage of it.
What about tokenized stocks? If you look at the trading symbol MCVT, the potential to go into a tokenized world, we're going to see that. Is there a likelihood that we could start, trading MCVT, within the Sui ecosystem?
Yeah, so from a performance perspective, like we certainly thought about that sort of thing from the beginning. Like when we built Sui, the main thing that we did that was different from Libra was a single box system that was designed to handle payments, basically payments between various wallets that are for cross-border. And that's a much less demanding workload than trading. With trading, you have to do hundreds of thousands or not millions of transactions per second. The latency is super, super important. And so we thought about how can you design Sui so that as you add more cores to the machine, as you add more machines to the system, you continue to get more and more throughput, and that you can do this, not just as a one-time thing, but do it elastically, like the hyperscalers do. Provision more machines because Christmas is coming up or because it's a busy trading day. Scale it back down to keep the operational costs reasonable at other times. In addition, we've thought a lot about when you add additional machines, how do you make sure you don't add latency? We don't want to have to trade off latency and throughput as much as we can. We just want to be able to scale horizontally. So that's a use case. Once you talk about tokenized stocks or bringing some or all of the stock market on chain, these things start to become really, really important. In terms of like, when will that actually be happening? Well, I think there's lots of these pilots. There are things that are good and bad about them. Certainly we're interested in trying these sorts of things on Sui. But I think the key thing is if you pilot this somewhere where it's a layer 2 and it's running on the EVM and you have sequential transaction throughput, there's going to be a limit to the size of your pilot. Whereas we've really designed things so that as ambitious as someone wants to be, they can come and try it out on Sui and there won't be any limit to their ambitions in terms of scale.
Well, and this is going to open up a lot of different projects and companies, I think, into treasuries that we have not seen just yet. Because right now it's been mostly direct exposure to the base asset. And I think they're going to get creative, especially if you think about just the Sui ecosystem. I'm kind of curious, Sam, is it Sui or Sui? Everybody always has this conversation.
Yeah, it's a funny question, right? So the original intention is that it's pronounced Sui, like sweet without the T is the way I used to say it. But I think at this point, like the many different ways to pronounce it, you hear Sui, you hear Sui, you hear Sui. Is sort of part of the lore, and so I embrace the like it's what you
there you go, man.
We're accepting all things.
I love it. All right, guys, the ticker is MCVT. You guys can, of course, check it out over there, learn a little bit more about Mill City and what they're doing. It's been great having both of you guys on the show. We'll definitely try to do more roundtables like this. So thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Paul. It was my pleasure.
You bet. You bet.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, you guys, if you are not part of the Diamond Circle, make sure and jump in on that. That is our own private group where you guys can join for absolutely free. We do a lot of deep dives in terms of additional research, all sorts of good stuff over there. We'll leave a link down below. And as I said, absolutely free. You can also catch me out there on X at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on The Paul Barron Show.